Well, it is a privilege for me to be on the line here today with four incredible men. I have said are men of God, but they are friends of mine, and they each have come into my life at different seasons. Some of them many, many, many years ago, and have walked. Some of them more recently. So let me just introduce them to you, and I just want to begin a conversation. On the call is Alex Bryant. Alex and Angela have served in pastoral roles all over the country, now leading Alex Bryant Ministries, is an author of several books, but most recently a book that really addresses the situation. I think it was prophetic, Alex, the release and the timing of your book. And I want to make sure we give a shameless plug to that book before we're finished. I have it sitting right here on my desk. So, and then Mike is originally from Oklahoma City, and got to know Mike and when he was a teenage kid while ministering in his church. And Mike latched on and began to pursue a relationship, and was so consistent in that we developed one and from a distance. And then Mike joined a North Place staff years and years ago, now lead pastor in Southern California. And then Bill Beamon. Bill is currently serving as an elder at North Place Church. Was with J.P. Chase Morgan for years in banking and finance. Actually, kind of funny story. I met Bill in a banking situation at a branch, and Bill didn't even go to our church at the time, but helped me in an incredible professional way in leadership at a bank. And years ago, he walked into the church, and I'm like, "Hey, I met you before." So that was kind of a incredible. Bill and Trina and their family are awesome blessings to North Place. And then Monte Coleman. Monte is known for his athletic prowess, the Ring of Honor with the Washington Redskins, one of the great all-time linebackers in the NFL. But Monte moved to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where I pastored, which is his hometown. He moved back after retirement and was looking for a home church. He and Yvette sat down with me, and when they made Pine Bluff First their home church, it was an answer to my prayer and a true piece of taking what had been a traditionally white church in a traditionally black community and integrating a church. When a native son of Monte's stature allowed me to be his pastor and came to that church. It was subtle to everybody else, but I think the long-term ripple effect was incredible healing for community and for the church. And Monte still serves. Recently retired from college coaching, and recently became ordained. He's always served in ministry, but is now an ordained minister. And so just champion a lot of that, all what you guys have meant to me and Haley and our family. And as I said offline, every one of you have come into our lives at different places, at different times, at different ages. Every one of you have added value to us. And you've specifically, and I don't know the best word to use, mentored me, taught me, helped expose blind spots for me. And I think it's that iron sharpening iron concept. So thank you all. It's early in the morning. I don't know when people will be listening to this, but I think greatest kudos goes to Mike out there in LA, who was up before 6 a.m. to get on this call. It's 6 a.m. for you there, Mike. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me just, I'm just going to start. I'm like I said, I'm not an interviewer, but I'm just trying to get what is in my heart out open and just learn out loud in a sense. And I remember when I had an aha moment. And I mean, Mike, I'm going to pitch this to you, and I don't even know if you remember this conversation, but when the Trayvon Martin situation exploded in the media, and there was a similar conversation like today, but not at the magnitude of today around the George Floyd murder. I was seeing all the hype and the ideology and all the news, and I'm sitting here getting information from both angles, maybe multiplicity of angles. And I was like, I got to call somebody who sees this from a different perspective that can help me see what I don't see. And I called Mike and I said, Mike, is this hype? Is this overblown? Or is this real? I mean, tell me. And Mike just said, well, Pastor, all I can tell you is how I feel. And when Mike started explaining to me how he felt, I was like, dear God, how do I have friends I've done life with, and I not know this, I not feel this. And for at that moment, it stopped being a news story somewhere in some other state. And it became so real to me, and it has never stopped being real to me. And so, Mike, would you just, I don't know if you can recall that conversation or you have any comments in regard to that, but that's when, I mean, obviously, that is when the blinders started falling off of me in relation to this particular issue. But can you speak to that?
Yeah, I remember that conversation. I remember I had gone to the grocery store that same day, and I told you when you called, I was like, this is maybe since 9/11, the first time I've been scared to leave my house. And there was this kind of sense of, I don't know how people see me. I don't know how I should see them. And it just became this kind of like heartbroken fear, like kind of commingling. And I think the reality is, I read a book a long time ago by a guy named Andrew Wilson that talks about the life we never expected. And he was speaking about his children and some challenges they had gone through. But he said, a lot of times you remember the one-off moments when you get a diagnosis or something crazy happens in your life. But it's actually the day-to-day pain that tears at your soul. And what you just stated about, like, I didn't know that this existed. I think there's probably this day-to-day undercurrent that we feel as Black men in America of just injustice or racism or prejudice or bias that we've probably learned to live with. But then moments like Trayvon Martin, or moments like when Philando Castile and Alton Sterling were killed in the same week, and then it caused Dallas to be in an uproar and 5 officers got killed. Like, those are those moments that everybody sees, and it kind of grabs people's attention. And so when we had the call that day, we were in the middle of one of those moments that grabs our attention. But I think it's actually the kind of slow day-to-day grind of feeling injustice that actually is the weightiest. And so maybe that's why it's even hard to perceive, is we don't see the big moments all the time, but it's actually the small moments that hurt the most.
And I want you other guys to comment on this, but I really think, and what I'm trying to, again, I've said, and we've heard it a lot lately, the answer right now begins with listening. And I'm trying to listen right now, and help other people listen through the evolution process, whatever that helped me. I would say to you, I mean, obviously we all have blind spots, but I would say the Lord had done deep works in my heart years before any of this, long time ago, uprooting prejudice from my heart. But that didn't mean I wasn't still looking at the world through a majority culture filter. You know what I'm saying? And so it was the experience with you, Mike. And when I felt your pain, I know you, like, I consider you, like, I mean, not just in the church sense of brother. I mean, we think of each other as family. And so when you felt that way, I felt that way. And it was almost this dear God moment. And for those of us in a majority culture, what is a daily experience for you is only reality to us in these big moments. And so that's why we have to maximize this moment to help other people have the same awareness that I gained in that conversation with you that day, and create, while there is a listening ear, there's some other people that need to have a dear God moment and realize the world isn't always as the way I see it or the way I think it is, and find some level of empathy. But I think the problem is a lot of people in my situation, in my world, who are white, dominant culture, don't have any real meaningful, deep relationships with people of color, enough to have an honest conversation where they can pick up the phone and say, how does this make you feel? And trust what the other person on the other end of the line is saying. But it was the depth and the closeness of that relationship that was truth to me. because I know you and I trust you, and it changed me. And either you guys, Monte, Bill, Alex, want to comment on this part of the conversation so far?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to comment that I'm refreshed to know that there are varying views on this call, because it's such a tempting thing to isolate an African American at this time and be able to ask them, tell me what you're thinking, without realizing that the points of views are so varied still, even amongst our people. And so it's really cool to be able to see multiple faces. It's cathartic in the way to hear Mike's feeling of it, because my feeling was similar. When I first saw the video, I had a pastor friend of mine pass it to me via social media. So it didn't even sink on me that this particular event happened recently. I thought it was something from the past, because there's been so many coming up from the past. But once I had the realization that it was the day before, it was just yesterday. When I saw it on Tuesday. It was Monday when it happened. It really floored me that it was live and it took place like this. And it was a lot of emotions that run through my body at the same time. First, I was shocked that we saw this. And then the next emotion that ran through me, of course, was anger, because immediately I pictured, myself or my sons in that situation. And so it was just, I couldn't believe that people that were advocating for George Floyd, no matter what crime he was accused of doing, no crime is worth a public execution in this day and age. And when I found out it was over a $20 counterfeit bill, and he might have been high on drugs, even with those things planned, there's no sense of having anybody publicly executed. And so that's what ran through my mind. And immediately after I processed it, I had to process it again, because my wife works in the medical industry. And when she came home, she was tired from her day. And I said, baby, you have to see this. And so she saw it, and I didn't expect the visceral reaction that she had. She literally started walking towards the TV, and as if she wanted to try to stop the event herself. And she literally went and she has to kind of get clean from working in the healthcare world. And as she was doing that, I can literally hear her praying because she was just so distraught from what just happened. So she's literally praying because I could tell when my wife prays it with a lot of emotion and fervor, I could hear it. And I just knew. And then after I processed it with her, I had to process it once again with I have 3 boys. I have one that's 8 that I haven't shown the video yet. But I showed my 2 high school sons. One's going to be a senior in 2021. And I had them sit down and I had them watch it. And just the look of disbelief on their face and shock. And they looked at me and said, what did he do to get this? What is happening? And I had to kind of just have that talk that we learn to have with our young sons, just to make them aware that in this day and age, it's a possibility. You have to manage your life in a way where you have to manage the probability of you coming in contact with a police officer. And not all police officers are bad, but it just happens. It happened to me a couple times in my life. And you just have to have this conversation with your son, it's just mind blowing. So, from my perspective, again, it's cathartic to talk about it, but it's also tiring because you personally feel this and you go through the roller coaster of emotions throughout the week. And I feel like that's what our family had to endure. And not just here, but all my family and friends, just to try to kind of figure out, where are we in this? And we're still figuring it out. It's still something we're working on. So
Monte, I want to go to you. I'm going to come to you first. Alex, I wanted you to say what's on your heart in a minute, but there was something you said in a podcast that you and Angela did. I want to bring that up to lead into your part of the conversation. Monte, before I give it to you, Bill, you said something I want to make sure anybody listening to this does not miss. You made a very incredible statement that I think people know intellectually, they just don't do, is just to assume that every Black person is going to have the same point of view on this. to paint everybody with, there's just as much prejudice and bias in coming to that conclusion as there is that got us into this, that there is a communal aspect of how you grieve, but everybody on this call could have a very real and different opinion. And so I think it's important that we highlight that. And I think you made a very valuable insight, and I didn't want that to get overlooked in the middle of all the other incredible things you just said. Go ahead, Monte. I want to open the floor to you.
I don't want to be repetitive, but my feelings when I first saw the video was very much like Bill's. It shocked me. There was a disbelief. I couldn't believe this was actually happening in the 21st century. And the other one was afraid, because I too have a young son. And, well, not young, he's 25 years old. But from the conversations that he and I have had, some of the experiences that he's actually had physically or that has happened to him through his life with encounters with police by doing nothing, only by targeting him because he's a young black man. And it inspired me to sit and talk with him even more, the proper procedures that he needs to do if he's encounter. I agree with Bill and Mike also when he said every police officer is not a bad police officer. I mean, some of my friends, the church members, state police, there's city police, there's sheriffs, and we have a great relationship. But you know, one bad apple makes the whole police force make us stereotype the whole police force, and that's not right on our part. But we also have to make sure that our young black men understand the procedures if they are pulled over. Abide by what the police are saying. Don't put ourselves in harm's way trying to be macho, and just do what they say. So I was totally shocked by the video, and it did make me afraid, not necessarily for myself, but for my son and other young black men. My son, there's a little town here in Arkansas, and I won't name it, but my son and his friend was going to get something to eat one night, and they were pulled over by the police. And this policeman did everything in their power to flame a fire that wasn't even there, to make something happen out of nothing. And it was just a routine traffic stop. For what reason? He never said, but he wanted to antagonize them to do something so possibly they could be a statistic. And I think if it wasn't for the conversations that he and I had previously, then something could have escalated from that. And I thank God that nothing did. Eventually the police kind of backed off and just let him go. He never gave him a reason why he stopped him. There was never a ticket or anything given. And I think it was just a matter of profiling two young black men in a halfway decent car, and decided to pull him over. So I agree with him. The video shocked me. It really did. It was an execution. And I never thought I would see anything like that in the 21st century.
Let me just say this. You guys, again, I keep trying to interpret this through the lens of there are some people who are majority culture people who are not going to have, they're not going to be listening this far into this interview. They're done. They're tired of these conversations. But there are some who are genuinely humble, genuinely want to learn. And I'm trying to think through their grid and what has helped me the most, and the things that have, like my conversation early on with Mike years ago, but the fact just recently, the things that bothered me the most was Melvin and Kia Dixon. They moved, but were a part of North Place for years. And you know, Kia's recently said, Pastor, you guys sit, you know, you got Caden and Gavin, and you sit them down and you have conversations about representing your family, and somewhere along the life you have conversations with them about the birds and the bees and representing Jesus and representing your family and keeping up the good name and all of that. She said, but we have to have another conversation you don't have. Right. Is we have to tell our sons what they should and shouldn't do when they get pulled over, how they have to act, what not to do, even if they've done nothing wrong. And it's just, there are so many people in my shoes who are not aware that you guys are having to coach your sons on how to conduct themselves. I'm not talking about don't get this girl pregnant or don't blah, blah, blah. No, you're talking about your kids. Just don't do anything. Even if you didn't do anything wrong, be complicit. I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel, I mean, it's just not right. Okay. Let me just call it what it is. But I think I need to feel that with you. And it makes me angry to know that Melvin and Key are sitting on the couch as nervous as I was about having the conversation about the birds and the bees with my boys. You guys are having conversations just like you did, Monty. You just mentioned conversations about having to tell Kyle to conduct himself in a way I would have never had to have that conversation with my son, ever. And the fact that you have to is the problem.
Yes.
That is the problem.
And for a lot of young black men and fathers, that's a reality. That's a daily reality.
Yeah, I know. And it grieves me, literally. But it's a good grief, because I'm so aware, as I became aware with that conversation with Mike, I'll never forget it. And I'll never look at life or young black men the same way, because I know the conversations that were had with them before they left are very different than any I've ever had with my son. I've had a lot of conversations as a father with my son about representing the family name, but I've never had to have that one. And I think that's important. Alex, I know you've been sitting there silently, and I want you to have the opportunity to address any of this, but that issue about your conversation with your sons, this whole issue, but you made a comment with Angela, and I know this, it was one of those moments that I just thought, oh, I can't, you are a very funny guy. You're a former college football player, a big guy. And you say in your head, you said on the podcast with Angela, I know I'm big, I'm intimidating, and I'm black. So when I come into an arena where there's predominantly white people, in order to keep them from prejudging me, I try to disarm them by being funny, where if I was white, I wouldn't feel the need to do some of those things. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that podcast or making that statement. And so it just segues into this whole, and then feel free to talk about your conversation with your boys. But that conversation when I heard you say that, I'm just thinking, as angry as I was that you guys are having to coach your kids on how to act and respond to the police, that stuck with me.
Yeah. I mean, I call that concept navigation. And as a black man, I have to know how to navigate. I've been around a lot of white people. I've been in the business world. I'm in the Assemblies of God, which is 90%, white. And I'm married to a white woman, so I'm in a lot of rooms with white people and just the majority culture. And this is the thing. I have a fairly positive view of race relations, of white people. I see the positive change that Dr. King and the other civil rights workers, their work, so that we can be where we are. The laws are on our side for the most part. I think that collectively as Americans, people are against racism. People want equality. People want justice. I do agree with that. What I see happening now is some of our implicit biases and our prejudices are starting to come to the surface. And, if we're looking at a spiritual thing, it's like those last tentacles, those last tentacles of the sin of racism are digging in deep. And those are things that we don't want to let go, because a lot of those are in our traditions, in our family heritage, and things that, and the privilege, that term, when white privilege came out 5-10 years ago, white people were mad. I have a brother-in-law who, he loves me, I love him. And, but he's as redneck as they come. I mean, like bright redneck is what he would be, So, and we talk about these things, and, and we have so many conversations. He helps me see it, from, the gun toting, Trump bumper sticker, redneck. I mean, and I love him, and I'm not saying anything against Trump or whatever, whatnot, but, he helps me see things and understand it from his perspective. you know, and then I have another cousin on my mom's side of the family who is a Black nationalist. And so I get it from, you know, all those different perspectives. But there's a navigation that has to happen when you're around white people as a professional man, as a Black man married to a white woman. There's been multiple times where, like, Monty, you were talking about the story down in Arkansas. I had one, and I will say the town, Reed Springs, you know, down near Branson. But Angie and I, it's probably when we were first married. I'm like, I always told Angie, I'm like, we don't turn on the dome light. You know, small towns, you be safe. I never, ever even think about speeding in a small town, especially at nighttime. I'm trying to make it, you know, home and stuff. And so we were coming out of McDonald's one time, and Angie just turned on the dome light and just pulled out. And I'm like, babe, what are you doing? And she, oh, it's not a big deal. She wanted to put something on her burger. And the next thing you know, police come up behind us. And, you know, that was one of those conversations of, I just pulled out, so I wasn't speeding or nothing, and pull up behind me. And, you know, I'm there and I'm like, and see, I told you, you know? And then, you know, we get the whole, she's like, it's going to be fine. I'm like, I'm at my hands at 10 and 2, you know, hey, officer, how you doing, sir? What are you doing here? First question he asked, you know. I'm like, well, we're just, you know, passing through, trying to make it home. You know, and I'm the kind that I give information. I don't lock up because I'm like, I don't want you to have any reason to think that I'm a threat. I'm like, yeah, sir, I live, you know, just up the road here, you know, in Nixon, Missouri, south of Springfield. We're just trying to make it home. Just came from a show in Branson, you know, and he shines a light on me, looks over at Angie. Ma'am, are you here on your own? Yes, sir. This is my husband, you know. Are you sure? You know, and so you know what that is, you know, and you know, asks a lot of questions, and you know, ends up just no reason, but I just didn't know if you needed help or anything, or directions or anything like that. So, but you know, we have to navigate. Black people, we have to navigate in certain situations and circumstances. My eyes were opened when I'm in high school and I see Rodney King get beat to sleep on TV. I mean, I was just like, dude, I got to always be careful. And my dad, that's when he had to talk with me about, hey, you know, this is what he said. When you get pulled over, yes, sir, no, sir, your hands are at 10 and 2. You always ask for permission to go into your glove compartment to get things, you know, take your hood down. When you go into a store, you know, I teach my kids, hey, we don't get the benefit of the doubt. You don't wear a hoodie in the store. You look a clerk in the eye. Never touch anything that you don't intend to buy. I mean, those are just, it just is what it is. I'm raising 4 Black sons, you know, college age and high school age and junior high. And we just have to have these conversations. I'm trying to teach them how to navigate. And I tell my boys from this perspective, it just is what it is. We all are going to run this race. And the bottom line is we have, because of the color of our skin, we have a few more obstacles to overcome than other people, but you're still expected to win because Bryant's win. You know, and I joke and I use humor with it. I tell my kids, I'm like, see, you guys have the best of both worlds. You know, when the police come, you claim white. Scholarship time, you claim Black. You know, I mean, so you know, I'll take it as both worlds. But you know, it is what it is. We have to navigate. So.
That's good.
That's a great way to put it. And it's again, it was in a moment of awareness for me, which is what I'm wanting other people to have. When I heard you and Angela talking about it, when I heard Melvin and Kia talking about the conversation with their sons, I immediately heard it and why didn't I think about this sooner? I should have known. If I was a Black father, I'd be having the conversation too. So why did I not think about it? But just the fact that I thought about it when I heard you say, because there's an automatic prejudgment of you because you're a big Black man, you have to navigate approaching a predominantly white crowd differently than you would. I don't know. It just, those are awareness moments for me. My conversation with Mike and Alex, you said something, and I'm just going to speak this. And I'm saying this out loud, and I don't want to be misconstrued by any of you or anyone else, but I'm just being an honest moment because there's someone listening to this today who comes from the world I come from. I come from a very prejudiced world, and almost the more religious you were, the more legalistic you were, it seemed like the prejudice ran deeper. And so being a part of a church and even being expressive in your worship and being committed to holiness, holiness was all about whether you wore makeup or not, or whether you cut your hair or not, or what kind of clothes you put on. or didn't. Those were the holiness standards. And yet in that environment, there was deep, deep prejudice. I remember this was, I couldn't get a hold of this friend of mine to bring him into this call because I was just thinking through my life and the people that had mentored me. But I was in Bible college in Springfield, traveling and preaching. I met a guy named Michael, who became a very good friend of mine, a black brother who could sing, and we developed a relationship, traveled all over the country. We would minister together, had a lot of conversations as 19, 20-year-old young men in a car. And he helped me navigate some things coming out of a deep Southern view of life, a white view of life. And I started realizing in those conversations with Michael, he's right. What I believe my whole life is wrong. To agree with him means everybody I've ever loved in my life was wrong. And if I agree with him publicly, the people that I love in my life are they're not gonna embrace me anymore. So the process of coming out of deep inbred cultural racism is this in between of, I know it's wrong. I know what these people are saying. And yet, when I go public with this, I will be disowned by the people who do. I won't be included by this group over here because I'm not black. And I will then be rejected by what is now my tribe because I see the world differently than they do. There comes a moment in a person's life when they have that awareness and they have to make a decision. And there comes a moment when they get so infuriated that they either are empowered to navigate that diplomatically, where they can salvage those relationships, or they're willing to do what's right at the cost of those relationships. But that is a process for someone sitting here like me, who looks at life through a lens that I looked at it at one time. They're having to make choices. And for men in your situations, in your families, I mean, you're saying that's an easy choice to make. You guys have treated us this way forever. I mean, that's an easy choice to make. And I get that. I understand that now on this side. But I can tell you there is a sense of loss and moving from a cowardice to a courage to make the decision. Because to reject racism when you grew up in deep Southern gun-toting South is to reject part of the identity. You've got to remove a part of your identity and the people that embrace you for that identity. And I have come to the point in my life that I'm now at a place where I say good riddance, but early on, that was a very tough thing to navigate for me. And so I don't know if I explained that well, but I'm just some people that are in my situation who are not as far along in this journey as I am are in that their gut says, these people are right. This injustice and this racism is wrong. But the minute I say something about it, I lose family. I lose friends. And I don't know, Alex, it looks like you have a comment on that.
I'm going to say something. And, because I'm married to a white woman, I saw Ange go through that when we were looking to get married. Her grandmother owned slaves from the deep South Georgia. And, when Angie and I, we grew up in high school together, we're in the Assemblies of God because Angie's mom invited my mom to come to the Assemblies of God church. We were Kojic. And so, they're good people. And so I remember when we were looking to get married and we started dating, that was a big thing for her to deal with. That, well, I know that if I choose Alex, this man that I love, my family's not going to, accept me. So out of that came, and the Lord gave us this, that we have to redefine the terms. Not everything is racist. And we put this in our book. This is big. And this helps us, a lot of our white brothers and sisters, go on the journey that Angie went on. So some things are racist. Let's just be real. Racism is alive and well today. It is. We are not in a post-racist society just because we had our first black president. That is a misnomer. People say, well, you guys should be happy. We gave you one. Now shut up. No, there's still racism. But some things are not racist. Some things are seen racially ignorant, and some things are racially insensitive. And so I want to define those, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, because as soon as we label something or someone racist, I'm done with you. Conversation's over. You're racist. I don't care what you have to say. It's like being called a pedophile. You don't come back from that. And so some people aren't racist. They're racially insensitive, you know, and we use some of our personal examples. You know, there's times that I can remember, you know, times when in my life where I just say something because there's within, you know, the majority culture, they want to debunk political correctness, you know, and, you know, like little people, the title for little people has evolved. When I was growing up, you called little people midgets. Well, you know, now that's insensitive. Don't say that. My kids, my sister, they tell me all the time, you can't say that, you know, and so you know, some things are insensitive. And then some people are just ignorant. I remember I didn't know much about the Latino culture. I was pastoring in Florida, Pastor Betz's church. I'm over all the youth pastors. I'm with the Latino youth group. And we had a wonderful 3-day retreat, you know, ministered to them. We've left there. We're all having a good time, 65 Latino kids. And I'm in the back. We're at McDonald's. They're all ordering. I'm in the back with the youth pastor. And I just talked to her. I don't think anyone else is listening. And so I'm like, hey, so is everybody here Mexican? Man, that you would have thought the time stopped. Their necks cocked. They look back at me. No, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm Guatemalan. I'm Honduran. I'm like, my bad. I didn't know. I was ignorant to those cultures. And they gave me a pass because of the relationship I had. But I then had to go and learn about that. So I think it's important we can bring our white brothers and sisters along on the journey by letting them know, hey, listen, that one, okay, that might be racist, but that's just insensitivity. You're not being sensitive to the culture and to the needs. I think a lot of biases fall in that, but now you're ignorant. You need to do some research on that one, because we just can't label everything racist because conversations shut down.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Can I chime in a little bit as well?
Yeah.
I know the challenge is you got 5 preachers on a call, so every one of us wants to preach a sermon. And so
I want the offering though. I'm claiming the offering.
But I think you said something, Pastor Bryan, that I think is really important. When you started recognizing what you were walking through with, I always think Mookie, because that's how you introduced me to him, as Mookie. When there's an opportunity for empathy there. There's an opportunity not to just feel for, but to feel with. And so what you talked about if I cross this line, I'm betraying my tribe, but I don't fully belong here. You were making that choice. I can say for myself, and I can suspect for the other brothers on this call, for Alex saying, hey, I'm in the Assemblies of God and it's 90% white, for Bill being an elder at a predominantly white church, growing more multi-ethnic and multicultural, and then for Monte jumping over into Pine Bluff, a predominantly white church, even though it was his hometown. We don't necessarily get that choice, but we certainly have that experience. Like, to enter into a predominantly white culture, there are things that I just lay down, like style of music. We joked in your truck driving back from Louisiana, you were listening to country music and you were telling me how much you liked it. And like, I lived in situations where I was told that music was right and holy, and me liking hip hop or R&B was wrong because of a cultural bias, not because either one of those were wholesome in one way or the other. And so I think we cross that line all the time. And so when you make that statement, there's actually a reality that you feel what we feel, but we may not have the same choice in entering into that. And so I think even somebody who's listening, who's like, yeah, I want to cross that line and be part of that conversation, but I'm going to lose some things. Yeah. And we have too. The other thing that I just want to point to, I mean, I think what Alex just said is unbelievable. I think when we think about racism and you throw out that term, people are like, I'm not that. I'm not somebody who's burned a cross in somebody's front yard. I'm not somebody who's used my power to oppress somebody else. And so I think even the way we think about sin is really important, because most of the time we think about it, it's an individual action that I committed, versus particularly when you're having this conversation about systemic injustice, there are corporate things that our nation has done that I haven't done anything to fight against. And so when not everything is racism, some things are prejudice, some things are bias, some things are just complicity with bad systems. But I think helping people see, no, we're not saying you're the full extent of this, but what part do we play along the way of not seeing and calling out systems that are broken is part of why those systems can still exist.
May I add something?
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Mike kind of triggered it. Also, not just saying that, you know, there are probably 90% of the people that we talk to that would say, I'm not a racist. And I know, Pastor, you and I have had the opportunity to read the book, The Third Option, and it addresses that. And one thing I really wanted to address was color blindness. I know a lot of times people use that phrase and term colorblind, not realizing what that really means.
Can I say this, Bill? I was going to set this up and ask you guys to say this, so you
I'm so sorry.
uncomfortable. No, I forgot to write it down, but I want you to speak to this, and I want white people who think they're doing a good thing that say, I don't see color, I'm colorblind. Let them know. Tell me why that's not a good thing.
Well, on the surface, you would think, oh man, I really want to move forward. I don't want to, you know, even haggle or quibble about anything that's happened. Let's just go together forward. But what happens is inadvertently, you take the role of saying, I'm not going to acknowledge anything that's happened in your past. I'm not going to acknowledge anything that's happened in history. I'm not going to acknowledge any of the hurt, any of the wounds that's happened to your family or even your history. Let's not talk about that, because maybe it's too difficult to have that conversation, or, you know, we don't really want to acknowledge those ills. But unfortunately, you know, growing up, that's all we know is those ills. And that's all we've kind of heard stories about or even seen ourselves. I have my own personal interactions. I know all the gentlemen on this call have had their own personal interactions. And so these are things that we're thinking about as we see things happening time and time again. And I think this time in our this moment in time was pretty unique, because now for the first time, I believe everybody is able to take the accumulation of all the things that's happened. And it just, you know, every time something happens, you know, there's a reaction to what has happened. But I think it then soon gets swept under, because again, we're trying to get past it, and the media has passed it as far as a news headline. But I think in this last death, everything had accumulated to a point where the visceral reaction that everybody was showing was just the accumulation. The pressure built to the point where it just exploded, because there's the first time we're able to, whatever the social media is allowing us to do, to pull up names and pinpoint the different people this has happened to throughout history. Now there's a huge picture, and if you pinpoint or draw the lines, you start to see that there's a pattern here. and we can't continue to go through this, because who's next? That's the question that we're asking privately. So when you say colorblind, be careful, because it's not really helping anyone to say that we're going to overlook all of those things that's happened just because we want to move forward. Another thing I want to just make a reference to, and I think we talked about it, implicit bias. Implicit bias is such a thing that people don't even understand, that they have biases that they've grown up in, things that they're comfortable with. The book addresses this as well. They call it in or out groups. And what happens is, when we feel comfortable, we feel comfortable with people that we've grown up with, and we have a familiarity with. And we even have familiarity with people that may be of other races, but they've grown up with us. So they're kind of like us still, you know, even though they're a different race, they're like us. But what happens is, we see people that we're not comfortable with, that we haven't grown up with, we see from afar. Alex alluded to going into a Hispanic place and calling everybody Mexicans. Well, it's something that happens not intentionally, but you grow up and you hear about that group of people from a distance. You may even hear about that group of people from your circle of people, but you never really have a true relationship. And because you don't have that true relationship, you really don't know the nuances and the difficulties that they're suffering. And so you make your judgment based on your own personal view, your own personal reference. And so when you do that, you're putting a diagnosis or a prescription on a set of people you have no relationship with. And because of that, there's a very, very big miss, because you're not really connecting with them on the level that they have, and you don't know them. So you're going to deal with them like that. They're that important to you because they're not with you. So we have to be careful. In this day and age with this thing right now, we need to take advantage of this time and make sure we get the opportunity to pull people outside of their own personal view. Get people outside of their bubbles to allow them to see for the first time what it's like from a perspective of somebody else on the other side. We need to have dialogues and purposeful dialogues to be able to say, not just tell me, how it is, but get to know a person on a relationship level where you can now, when you make a diagnosis or a prescription to help someone, there's a true connection that's made, and there's not a miss because we think we know from our perspective what's needed. There's a difference there, and I hope you guys kind of catch what I'm saying.
I do. Thank you, Bill. Monte, I'm going to ask you, and then guys, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, if you will, just to tell people exactly how they can get, follow you, or Alex, get your book. Mike, listen to your sermons. Bill, tell people about Unite Dallas, where you now work in ministry. And then, so Monte, just any comments that you have, because of, you've kind of sat there quietly for a few moments, but I do want to say, Mike has been very insensitive about my music. I have appreciation for all spans of music, by the way. But I will tell you, the first time I ever climbed in Monte's vehicle when he moved to town, I had another one of those dear God moments, because Monte turned up the jam and it was Kenny Rogers.
That's right.
I said, you just shattered every stereotype that I had the first time I climbed in your vehicle. So, so don't, Mike, don't be bashing on our country.
Very genuine. The albums, and I still listen to it today. I said album, but CDs or whatever. But yeah, that's my kids. When we traveled back and forth from Arkansas to Virginia, we threw in some Kenny Rogers and we jammed all the way to Virginia. It was 18 hours. So yes, sir. I didn't do it just for you, Pastor. That was very genuine for us. But one of the things, if there's people out there that's a little concerned, a question was asked to me. What if George would have been a white man? If George would have been white and the cop would have been black, would we still have the same type of uproar that we have? And my answer to him was probably not, because there's not a history that's backing what happened to George. The reason why we had the uproar, and the thing that we've got to overcome as a race, as a white race, as a black race, is the history. And we'll never overcome it. Right. We'll never be able to overcome the lynchings that happened over 400 years ago, the history behind the cross burning in yards and stuff. We'll never be able to overcome that. And I think that's the reason why one of the guys on the panel, which I respect, he said, who's next? Yeah. And that's the reality that we're looking at. Who's going to be next? So the thing that we've got to do, Pastor, and all you guys, all of us are ministers, but God gave us the remedy to this in Mark chapter 12, when he talks about God is first. That's the first law. And second is love our neighbors. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to preach the word of God, that our neighbors is black, Hispanic, white, brown, red, whatever. Those are our neighbors. And until we come to the reality of the word of God, and we as ministers preaching God's word, the world is going to be upside down like it is. We've got a major responsibility. I mean, I never met any of these guys, but just from the conversations that we've had and through your friendship with them, I mean, I can truly say I love each and every one of them for what they stand for. And this has been a thing to me also, because I've been silent. People have asked me to speak out against it, and I've been very, very, very silent. I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to alienate myself and have towards me as a black man. But it's important that I speak out, because there are people out there that want to do what's right. White people, and I should voice my opinion. I remember in high school. And I'm a lot older than you guys, and it was in the 70s. And we would sit down. We would have protests anytime we had an assembly. and we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And a lot of the Black folks that was there, Black kids that were there, students, would sit down, wouldn't stand up to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Pastor, during that time in the 70s, we were oppressed. We didn't have the rights, the same rights. They integrated us. I was first, in the first class of integrations here in Arkansas. And what the pledge said, we weren't experiencing. It was hard for us to go to places. The segregated water fountains and rooms and stuff had dissipated then. They wasn't around then, but it was still different. I'll tell you one other story that happened to me that scarred me for life. Now I'll go the back door, the long way around. Back when I played for the Redskins, every time we played the Cowboys, we had a player by the name of Mark May. Mark May played. He was a first round draft pick out of Pitt, and played tackle. And anytime he went against Randy White, it was a good battle, to the point that they start spitting on each other. And and Joe Gibbs would talk about it, and I'm saying, well, if somebody spit on me, it's over with. I'm out of that game and probably kicked off the team because it's going to be a fight. Don't spit on me. So, and the reason why I came to that conclusion was I remember Main Street was very popular here in Pine Bluff, and when you had a parade, all the parade procession went down Main Street, and kids like myself, I mean, there was the bands and the horses and all of that stuff was great. So we went down for the parades. And I'll never forget, I'm walking down, just following one of the bands, and there was a policeman, a sheriff, sitting on a horse on the sidewalk for crowd control. Nothing was happening. And he spit on me. He literally, as I walked by, he spit on me. And it hurt me and it scarred me. It hurt me. And till this day, I'm 62 years old, and I will not allow anybody. If you want to fight, you can talk about me. You can even kick me. But if you spit on me, it's on.
Yeah.
And that scarred me for life. Yeah, I don't consider, I'm not mad. I'm mad. I don't hold a grudge against that guy. I don't even know who he was. If he walked up the next day, I probably wouldn't know who he was. But just the idea that he sat up on that horse, and I'm at an age where I couldn't do anything, I couldn't say anything because of my culture, because of my race. If I would have done anything, I'd probably been locked up. But he spat on me, and that hurt me, and it still hurts me till today. That he thought of me, or he saw me as less as him, and spat on me.
And probably trying to provoke you so that he could turn you into making you look like the bad person.
Yes, sir.
Which the reality, Monte, is that very scenario is playing out in front of us every day.
Every day.
And I'll go back to what you said. This is the challenge right now, is that to criticize anything, because there is no middle right now, there is no opportunity to criticize anything. Everyone hears you blatantly calling everything evil. So you can criticize the law enforcement officers that are wrong and evil and prejudiced, and that not be the same thing as saying every police officer is a bad person. Okay. And so, but in our culture right now, if I want to criticize the president for any policy, and then all of a sudden I'm blasted about, I'm just told, like, since when did I get criticized every day for being a pastor, and I got big boy pants. I can take that. That's expected. The Lord knows you're going to get it if you're the president. But if you're in, and your world is so politically aligned, anybody that says anything negative automatically becomes your enemy, because we have lost any sense of logic, common sense, and balance in the polarization. It is either or, when the world and grace and the kingdom is full of both and possibilities. Guys, here's my thing. This is so rich for me. And of course, I could come hang out with all of you and spend the day. I just know that everybody's not going to listen through the entirety of this thing just for length. So let me ask this: if there are certain ways that they can learn more, and Alex, I'm going to start with you because I got the copy right here. It may not look right here. I don't know if it's going to be backwards. It's Let's Start Together, Alex and Angela Bryant. Hey, it's great, man. Thanks for sending me a copy. And mine's special because mine's signed. All right. So thank you, sir. Tell them where they can get that book and where they can connect with you and Angela.
Well, hey, and I'll say this, Pastor Bryan, it is special because you were the catalyst for that. And, we write about it in the opening, in the first chapter. Angie and I remember when we were at General Council in Denver, and I think it was 2005, you were speaking, and that message really pulled us into this. We knew then that God was calling us to be a bridge between the races and the bridge between the generations. And so thank you for that message. And it was really there. And then it's taken a turn. It's 15, 16 years later where this full message has come into fruition. And that's that God is love. I mean, we know that. And the word says in 1 John 1:5-7 that he's light. There's no darkness in him at all. And if we Christian people claim to be in the light and we don't live that way, then we lie, because it's the blood of Jesus that purifies us from all sin, even the sin of racism. And that's our message in that book, Let's Start Again. And so you can connect with us. We've really recently launched out, and we've done this full time. So we've resigned from our church. We felt like the Lord has called us to the ministry of reconciliation. We want to reconcile people unto God, themselves, and each other. And so this book is just one of the tools that we use to do that. We are at alexbryant.org. You can find us on Facebook, Alex Bryant Ministries. You can always follow me on Facebook and check out that. And even for the young people, we're on Instagram. And I think that I'm cool because I know about IG, because my son, he's in college, and his girlfriend, they manage that for me. So they're trying to make me look cool. But I don't know anything about Instagram really, but they tell me to say we're on IG. So
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, Mike, tell us, because Mike's an incredible expositor, communicator, preacher. How can people tune in, Mike, and listen to you?
Yeah. Let me, before I talk about me, just talk about you and say thank you for doing this, inviting our voices in. Like, I think this is so crucial. What you talked about early on is having a relationship with voices that you trust, and you've shared those voices with the rest of your church. And that's just incredible. And then obviously North Place, my love for you. I wouldn't be where I am today if you hadn't trusted me and given me an opportunity. So I'm just grateful. And even grateful for your message a couple of weeks ago. Just you're willing to take risk to push the church forward. So I want to publicly appreciate you. To connect with me, my church is called Kings Harbor Church. And so if you go to kingsharborchurch.org, you can get our sermons, resources. We're doing video. COVID forced us into video, so you can get video sermons. You can also get audio. I suggest audio. I think I look better in audio, and so I would offer you that. So yeah, that's how you can connect with us.
Awesome. And Bill, Unite Dallas. You guys work to unite the church, and then you have a part of your role there about the poverty experience, where you help people understand. And so just how can people connect with Unite Dallas?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me also echo Mike and just say thank you, Pastor. And thank you for being a change agent in a time when it'd be really, really simple to be quiet and not say nothing or do anything. So to give this opportunity, this platform to be able to share, this is the thing that we need to do more. I am with Unite Greater Dallas, been with the organization now, I can't believe 4 years, came right out of banking into this world, and it's a path that a journey God has me on now in a process. The cost of poverty experience is an opportunity to bring people outside of their comfort zones and let them see what it's like to live in the situation of poverty, or even now, possibly generational poverty, situational poverty, even more recent with all the things that's happened with COVID. and be able to see it from that family's perspective and how they have to make decisions, because there's a lot of judging that goes on from the other side, that because they don't have a connection or relationship, they can't see. What they see is their own world, and they would prescribe from their own situation. This is what I would do. This is how I would fix this. But when you get the chance to see it from another person's perspective, it gives you more empathy, and it helps you want to get a better relationship with the people that you're trying to help. And that's the whole point of this.
How can they have that experience, Bill?
Well, you can contact me at bill@unitethechurch.org. That is my email address. And then my website is unitethechurch.org. And there's a link there, unitethechurch.org / cost of COVID now, and then cost of poverty experience. But definitely email me if you need to contact me directly, and I'll get you more information on the cost of poverty or the cost of COVID experience.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Monte, any last comments about how people can connect with you, sir, or what's going on in your life?
Say me, Pastor. I kind of froze up there for a minute.
I said, any last comments there on how people can connect with you or hear you or follow you?
I'm at PBFA Pine Bluff First Assembly. It's pbfa.com. That's where they can find me at. Miss Teresa, she passed on any message that I have. I speak to the youth. I speak also to men. I'm working with Assemblies of God with their men's ministry, which I'll be doing some traveling with that. I'm currently employed as executive director of an after-school program, a nonprofit after-school program, ages grades 8th through 10th grade, and we'll hopefully expand coming up here if we do have school. But if anyone needs to contact me, and just like the other guys, let me just echo, how much I appreciate you and love you and the family. I mean, that's it. I love you guys, man, and I thank you. I greatly appreciate each one of the pastors that's online with us this morning. I do want to argue with Alex over the offering. Alex, we'll split it, all right?
I claimed it. I claimed it first.
But I just appreciate what you guys stand for, and I just pray for you. Today I've gained other friends around the country, and I thank God for that. But I can be found here in Pine Bluff. If anytime you guys need me to come out to talk about football or talk about what God has done in my life, I do have a Cinderella story, and God is using my family. And I don't mean that in a bragging way. I just thank God for what he's doing through our lives at this time to reach people for the kingdom of God.
Amen. Well, let me just
PBFA.com.
PFA.com. Let me just say, all of you, I love you. You were, and I want every one of you know this, just so that the perception is not there. A lot of people are, having their token calls and conversations right now because it's the end thing to do. Every one of you know the reason I didn't want to go get people just randomly. I wanted people who helped me, so that authentically I could help navigate other people and take them on a journey. And so I love you all. I love your families. I'm grateful to the value you've added to my life. And I'm excited because we're running this race together, and we're not finished yet. And we get to keep interacting and impacting the kingdom. So every one of you, and for those of you that are listening, if you're listening this long into the conversation, you must be interested. And so we really want to say thank you for tuning in today. And God bless you all.